This Marina Life with MDL Marinas.
It's quite a journey. It's an 8-month journey around the world, and I think most sailors, you talk to any sailor in a yacht club, if you had the chance to race around the world via Cape Horn, everyone would put their hand up and say, we want to do this.
All of them are learning celestial navigation. It's not just the navigator who will know how to navigate, and it's that sense of you are reliant on the boat that you have made sure it's seaworthy, and you are reliant on the team around you, those people that you've trained with, that you trust with your life. That's an extraordinary experience to go through. Anyone who's ever done the Whitbread has come out of it saying that it was the best experience of our lives, and I absolutely stand by that.
Hello and welcome to This Marina Life with me, Kerry Hereford-Jones, and MDL Marinas. Most of us would regard sailing nearly 30,000 miles around the world via the 3 Great Capes and the Southern Ocean an epic, life-changing achievement. But the 160 adventurers who will embrace the Ocean Globe race are now acutely aware getting to the start line on September the 10th is almost as challenging and as daunting as the race itself. Thousands of hours of refits, training, qualifying passages and safety courses are now being completed across the 14-strong fleet. This race is really in keeping with the spirit of the 1973 Whitbread, where ordinary sailors competed with sextants and paper charts, but without huge budgets, cutting-edge hulls and super high-tech computers. Really a return to non-GPS days of real people, real adventures, and a real chance to witness what determination and grit can achieve. Stopovers will include Cape Town in South Africa, Auckland in New Zealand, and Punta del Este in Uruguay, before finishing back in Southampton in April 2024. To kick this episode off, I began by asking MDL's Tim Mayer why and how this amazing event came about.
I'm still asking myself the why. I definitely know the how. So the how, to be honest, isn't as exciting as the why. But the how is purely about the fact that the MDL is 50 years old in 2023. And we soon found out that the Whitbread is also coming, having its 50th anniversary. So conversations to try and do this started just coming up to a year ago now. The Ocean Globe race was due to head off from France, and I have to say, sitting in my office at Ocean Village looking out at all our fantastic boats, I couldn't work out for the life of me why we would allow it to go from France when we could do it from here. So that is kind of how this started. And the why, it will be fantastic, but I have to say it's an awful lot of work, and I do wonder why we've started to do it. But we are, and it will be brilliant. It will be fantastic for Southampton, but it's going to be absolutely fantastic to see these vessels in Ocean Village. And obviously it's just amazing that these people are doing it in the way they are.
In many ways, Southampton Ocean Village is really the spiritual home of the original event, the Whitbread, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Ocean Globe race is essentially recognising 50 years of the old Whitbread. And the reason this is different to most races is that actually all the boats that are taking off from Ocean Village on the 10th of September are all designed before 1988. We've actually got 4 of the original yachts from the original Whitbread that are going to be racing. None of those boats are going to have any computers, there's no satellites, there's no GPS, there is no high-tech materials at all. So this is all about how the teams use the original technology of sextants, charts, and an awful lot of team spirit and raw determination. So these are really recognising the great traditions of ocean racing, and I have to say it's just an absolute credit to all the people involved in this, because it really is a massive human endeavour.
Now, as I understand it, you've actually got yacht racing royalty taking part.
We do, yeah, we do. Yeah, it's just fantastic. But Maiden is going to be back, so Tracy Edwards and a team, and yeah, it's just fantastic.
So 3 questions for you then, Tim. When will the actual race village open? When can people start to get a look at this amazing event? And more importantly, how do they gain access?
So we are opening the race village on August the 29th, so people can park in the multi-storey car park. Tickets to the village are absolutely free, and people can go online now and book them, and that's ndlmarinas.co.uk. It's /OGR23. and we are open until the 10th of September, and at 9 a.m. on the 10th of September the vessels will start to leave Ocean Village. They will make their way through Southampton water over to the Royal Squadron on the Isle of Wight, where the start line will be. If people keep an eye on the website, we will be updating as we go in terms of the volumes of boats that can go out, how people can join the race. But what I would say is that there are events happening every single day that this village is opening, so you'll be able to mingle with the 200 crew members, you'll be able to hear them do speeches and talks, you'll be able to take part in practical activities, there's a whole heap of bar activity, food activity, and we've also got a really nice exhibition going through 50 years of MDL, but also 50 years of the OGR, and I think we've also just secured 4 scale models of the OGR boats that are going to be in the water, and people will be able to go and see those, and these are really nice 2 metre long models, as close to the real things as you're going to see, and I believe we might even have a radio controlled race around the Marina basin, which would be fantastic.
And this isn't just about the ocean race itself, is it? It's also about supporting 3 very special charities. Who are they and how are they going to benefit?
So there are a whole heap of events where we're supporting charities, and I guess the first one to talk about is the Captain's Dinner, which is happening at the Harbour Hotel. It starts at 6:30, and within the Captain's Dinner we will be hosting a charity auction, and the exciting thing about the charity auction is that Nick Bonham from Bonham's Auctioneers is going to come across and do the auction, and all the money raised at that auction is going towards the Blue Marine Foundation. Listeners may know that these guys are the people behind the oyster beds and the seagrass beds that are going into the Itchen and the Hamble. We're also raising money for the Ocean Youth Trust, and the Ocean Youth Trust are a fantastic charity that MDL have supported for quite a long time now, and they're all about getting disadvantaged kids into sailing, and we host their boat Prolific at Ocean Village Marina. And the third charity is the Maiden Foundation, which is Tracy Edwards MBE's foundation, where essentially they are raising money, talking about trying to get females and inclusivity back into sailing. So it will be a fantastic dinner.
Those of us with long memories will remember Southampton water absolutely heaving full of spectator boats when these events started off in the past. You're really looking to recreate that, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think from certainly the interest we've had so far, we think it will create that. We're really lucky that Southampton City Council have got absolutely behind this. The Harbour Masters are absolutely behind it. We've got McIntyre events sorting out the race details itself. So it's going to be a really exciting time, and obviously the residents in Ocean Village are fully behind it as well. And let's not forget what this actually is. This will be 14 yachts completing close to 30,000 miles, going around the world, going across Africa's Great Cape, going into Australia's Cape Llewellyn, and then back over South America's Cape Horn before they land back at Ocean Village in March of April 2024. But actually, as part of the South Coast Boat Show and Green Tech Boat Show, we are having a prize giving ceremony for those crews on the 20th of April 2024. So this isn't just a few days in 23, it's going all the way through, so it will be a really nice start and finish to recognise 50 years of this event.
Will you be out on the water yourself then, Tim?
I think I am, to be fair. I think I've got a couple of options, and I'm not sure whether to take my own out or join one of our other boats. We're chartering to do it, but either way I will be getting as close to the action as I possibly can do.
Now, I heard a rumour, I don't know if it's true or not, that they were trying to get you out on one of the yachts for the whole race.
Oh, do you know what? If that's an option, just in case anyone is listening from the cruise I'm in, that is a definite way where I get away from the home duties. So, yeah, I'm up for that.
Now we know how the partnership was conceived. It seems fitting to meet the founder of the OGR, Don McIntyre. I suggested to him that his whole ethos is based around giving people a chance to experience an adventure in order to really challenge and develop themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been adventuring all my life, and when I got to 50, I started to think I should put back. It was actually triggered a bit by a 15-year-old girl, Jessica Watson, that wanted to sail solo around the world. So I supported her, and we didn't have anything to sell or anything to do. The brand McIntyre Adventure is just us, and that's where it started from. I said, right, let's get into it, and we'll start promoting adventure, because I believe it makes good people. And that's where it started from, nearly 20 years now.
Where did your own wanderlust come from?
I try to define that as saying I never really grew up, because it's all just having fun, just preparing and planning the expedition and getting all the gear together. And from an early age, I was doing lots of little adventures, and they got bigger and bigger as time went by. it's pretty much been every sort of 4 or 5 years, there's another project on the horizon for me, and I've been really lucky. I suppose I can say I'm enjoying life. I was born in a good time of the world in 55, and, things are good.
Your enthusiasm clearly is getting bigger and wider, not less and less. So, in a way, you're almost feeding off your own adventure lust.
I'm a big fan of the fact that, yes, you need education, and education is great, but there's some very important issues that you cannot learn from a book. And if you go out and do any adventure, and that can be as simple as paddling a canoe for the first time as a kid or riding a bike for the first time, everything will go wrong. You'll fall off the bike, you'll scratch your knee, so you do it again a different way, and then you decide to wear a helmet, and when you're finally done it, you say, oh, jeepers, I did it. So what happens is you actually get a situation where just doing that adventure, you get confidence because you achieved it. You've been involved with risk assessment, determining a better way to do it, value judgment, put a helmet on, and because you've got something to talk about, you become a good communicator. And the other big benefit is usually any adventure is happening in the natural world, in the mountains, in the rivers or lakes or ocean or whatever, so you have an appreciation of the environment. And that's why I believe you're creating people who become the community leaders. They become the, dare I say it, even politicians, entrepreneurs and so on, because they're involved with adventure. And the world needs adventure, because if people weren't adventurous, we'd still be driving around or riding a horse and cart. Every bit of progress is because of adventurous people. They want to take risk, So yeah, it's a good thing, and it's fun on the way as well.
You clearly are inspirational. You inspire so many people to get involved, and that is in many ways what the Ocean Globe Race is about. It's about inspiring people to go back in time, to reconnect. So give us the background to the OGR. How did this mad moment come about that you wanted to resurrect the Whitbread?
It's not that mad. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's an interesting journey. I actually was involved with attempting 3 Whitbread campaigns myself back in the 80s and 90s, and I'm a solo sailor. I did a single-handed race around the world in 1990 called the BOC Challenge, and I've been inspired myself by 3 particular people, and the biggest one is Robin Knox-Johnston from the Golden Globe Race. So I came up with the idea of recreating the Golden Globe Race in 2018 on the 50th anniversary. And at the same time, I said if that was a success, I would absolutely try and recreate the 50th anniversary of the Whitbread race, which was back in the good old days where ordinary people got to race around the world. And no one's ever been able to do that for 30 years. It's unbelievable. The Whitbread was there and it evolved into the Volvo race, which was fantastic. But at that point, it became fully professional. And so an ordinary sailor, like a club sailor or, ordinary guy that's got a nice boat, there's no venue to race it around the world via the 3 Great Capes and Cape Horn and so on. So putting it back on the agenda is very exciting. We're really happy where we sit at the moment. There's something like about over 200 crew are going to get the chance to race around Cape Horn and face all the oceans of the world for the first time, and they're amateurs, and each of the boats is owned by a real individual. It's back to the good old days, so it's going to be fun.
And in many ways, it was coming together, wasn't it, with MDL celebrating their 50 years, you guys are celebrating 50 years of Whitbread. It was almost like a marriage made in heaven.
Absolutely, and it goes beyond that, because I've got to tell you, we tried for years to get anyone interested in the UK, because the first Whitbread was established and founded from the UK, having looked at the Golden Globe Race. Everything comes back to the Golden Globe Race, but it was there. We had no response. There was no one at all in the UK wanted the race, and it's disappointing for me because we're following the historical track, it's following the clipper ships and so on, and I gave up. Honestly, I gave up. And we mentioned that in a press release late last year, just saying, oh, too bad, England's not going to work, no one's interested. And we were well and truly planning on a European start. And then fortunately, through a strange series of connections, MDL threw their hat in the ring, and I said, wow, this would be cool. And it was their 50th anniversary and so on. So I can honestly say, in respect to the UK, they've rescued the race for the UK, which is where it belongs. This is a chance for the UK to say they really want these sorts of events, because as you probably know, some events have left the shores of the UK, and even in our situation with the Golden Globe, we desperately wanted that in the UK as well, but we couldn't find any support, so we moved it to Les Sables d'Olonne here in France. So we're quite excited to be in Ocean Village, and that particular marina has a history with the Whitbread as well, so it is a match made in heaven.
What about the course then? You've mentioned there about going around the Capes. So let's just talk a little bit more detail about some of the legs and the actual course itself, because this is not for the faint-hearted. As you say, it's not mad, but it's a challenge on every level. And there's some pretty challenging legs on this race, aren't there?
Back in 73, that was all new, and there was a few sailors that never returned home. They were lost at sea. So there's a huge focus for the concept. It's going back to retro conditions. You have to use a sextant, paper charts. If you want to listen to music, you got to use a good old-style cassette tape player. So it's moving back to the 70s. They're the corny things. The celestial navigation, no GPS, no satellites, is really something that allows the sailors to enjoy something completely new and wholesome and fulfilling. It's a satisfying thing to do. The boats are very similar to the boats that were used in the early 70s, in the first Whitbreads. They're, solid, serious production boats, or any boats that had competed in the first 3 Whitbread races. And we've got some classics. We've got a Penduic, we've got a Maiden coming in. There's some quite historic boats. So then, sailing down the Atlantic, having started there in Southampton, we will eventually arrive in Cape Town. So it's the whole thing. You've got to cross over the doldrums and the equator, and then hook out wide and come around the South Atlantic High into Cape Town, and there'll be big parties there, so that's pretty cool. A lot of apprehension when everyone leaves Cape Town, because a lot of them will be stepping into the Southern Ocean for the first time, and there will be apprehension but absolute excitement as well, because it's one of the world's greatest wilderness areas. They'll experience some pretty horrendous weather at times and see some amazing things as well. So it'll be a roller coaster of emotions, sailing all the way around to Auckland, which has a huge Whitbread and Volvo race history. And they're incredibly excited about what's going on. The city of Auckland's going nuts at the moment, thinking, wow, the Whitbread's coming back, Then, having gone through New Year and Christmas there and all the rest of it, a lot of families coming out for holidays, it'll be setting off on the third most challenging or demanding leg, because there's a lot of psych going on. The thought of going around and sailing around, racing around Cape Horn is huge. They'll eventually get around it, and the seas will flatten off, and they'll end up in Punta del Este, which is an amazing place in its own right. It's population goes from 50,000 to 500,000 in a few weeks over summer there. That'll be a fun cultural stopover, and then all the way back to Ocean Village at the end of it all. So, and they'll have so many stories all the way around. It's a huge journey and plenty of ways to follow it.
Life-changing. And timescale-wise, we're talking about sort of March, I think, 24?
They'll be returning early April, and the prize giving, I think, at the moment is scheduled for about April the 26th, I think it is. So, yeah, it's quite a journey. It's an 8-month journey around the world, and I think most sailors, you talk to any sailor in a yacht club, if you had the chance to race around the world via Cape Horn, everyone would put their hand up and say, we want to do this. And already now there's 9 boats that I know of that are preparing for 2027. So, because they haven't had the time, they've only heard about it, they haven't had the time, and COVID knocked a few boats out and so on. But I think there's going to be an interesting history with the ocean race going forward.
Look at the legacy you're leaving here, Don.
I have no preconceived idea of what the start is going to look like in terms of spectator fleets and so on. I'm really hoping that the UK sailors and boating people and all that sort of stuff come out in force just to put a stamp on it and take ownership of it, because it really is part of their history. UK is recognised as being a nation of the oceans. I'm happy, so I've got my fingers crossed. We're going to have a big start day, starting off, it's basically the Fastnet start line, and we're going out in the Shield Hall, the steamship, so she'll be the flagship for the start. It'll be quite a day, so we're hoping that everyone's going to come out and send them off.
How great for you guys to have Tracy Edwards on board.
Yeah, absolutely. Tracy was into it at the moment we announced the race. She could see what it was about, and it was fantastic. And then, sadly, with her own original plan of voyaging, COVID came along and it halted the whole thing. They had to ship the boat home to the UK in lockdown, and then when it freed up, she had to take off again, and sadly had to sort of say, look, we can't do both now. We've got to continue with our around-the-world voyage. So we lost her. She wasn't an entrant. And with great excitement, at the end of last year, they realised that they did now have a chance to come back into the race. So it's fantastic, and we're excited about that, because now at least we have one UK entrant in the OGR, and you couldn't have a better one. We did have more, but COVID knocked them around. We had 2 other boats that had to pull the pin because of all the disruption of COVID over the years preparing, because it takes a few years to get ready to do this event. It's quite a big one.
Just talking a little bit about the crews themselves. You've talked there are a couple of hundred people. These are ordinary people wanting to just challenge themselves.
That's exactly right. And they're from all walks of life. There's mums and dads and kids. Each boat has to have a mixed gender crew, a young person, at least one under 24. And they're from all walks of life, and they're all there for different reasons. But the one common theme is that they're out to prove something to themselves, and it'll be a life-changing experience. And there's a huge amount of colour. And for the community of Southampton and so on, I just say, look, this is sailing, but it's not the normal yacht racing. It's not about money and speed to get you to the finish line first. There's some real characters there. This event will appeal to non-sailors as well. These are just, as you say, ordinary people setting off on a huge adventure around the world. It'll be quite surprising to see exactly what's going to happen. No one really knows. It's an unknown outcome. But they're real people. It's not the elite of the elite. This is ordinary people out there having a go.
My next guests are from the 3 charities that the OGR is supporting. First up is Mark Todd, the CEO of the Youth Trust. I asked him to tell me something about the charity.
So we are a sail training charity. We use what we call Adventure Under Sail, kind of personal development opportunity for young people aged 11 to 25, and we take these young people to sea on our 32-metre sail training vessel Prolific, which is home ports based at Ocean Village, and then we move down into Brixham for the summer. We take about 550 young people to sea every year. Probably about 2/3 of those young people will be disadvantaged or vulnerable in each way. So we'll be perhaps working with young people that have been bullied or bereaved or victims of crime. Young people have been homeless, young people perhaps affected by drug or alcohol abuse, trying to rebuild their lives, work with looked after young people, young carers, and many, many more. And then we'll work with youngsters that are into nautical studies, wanting to just improve their sailing skills to Duke of Edinburgh goal. But I think what's common really to the race and what people get out of sailing is that we all love sailing. For us, it's inspiring youngsters about sailing, but it's that those other things of team building, communication skills, resilience, dealing with setbacks, all those positive things that youngsters can take away from sailing with us. We've been doing this a long time. We grew out of the Ocean Youth Club, which probably a lot of people will have heard of, which started in the 1960s. And so it's a long time offering life-changing adventures to young people.
And the boat you're running now for your young folk to get their feet wet on, a little bit better than some of the boats you've had before?
The Ocean Youth Trust first boat was John Lang, which was purpose-built sail training boat for what was the Ocean Youth Club at the time. And she was fantastic. She sailed around the world, but she was built in 1970 with steel, and that design was just getting a bit dated and taking a lot of maintenance. So about 7-8 years ago now, we replaced her, and we were really, really lucky to be able to get hold of a vessel called Prolific, she's a 32-metre boat, 114 tonnes, and she's kind of a homage, a blend of kind of historic design. She's based almost, I'll get in trouble for saying a replica or anything like that, on an 1891 Grimsby sailing trawl, because she's not a replica. But kind of initially she looks like a traditional boat, but she's got a modern rig on her, she's got that modern twist and underwater profile, a modern keel. She'll go to windward, do 11 knots. And for us, it's kind of really important, really, that if you want to inspire people by sailing, you want a boat that performs well. The boat's designed to be, it's labour intensive. To get the mainsail up, there's a tug-of-war team of 10 people to get it up. 8 people for the mizzen. The main's about 30 metres tall, our main mast. The mizzen's about 26 metres. So it's labour intensive. And what you want, if you're going to say to a bunch of young people that, are you going to put the mizzen up? And they'll go, why? And you go, well, this will put another 2 knots of speed on. And what difference is that? And you can get them working out the difference on your arrival time. So you've kind of got the effort, you've got that kind of reward, and you've got them doing the maths, and that all builds up. But the boat has to perform. And of course, if you get people really inspired by sailing, the fact that it's tweaky and things have a result, you can go into the minutiae. But the boat has that, and then it's just got that huge space. We've got big open decks, high bulwarks. So
it's perfect then.
Yeah, and when we first moved from John Lang, which is much more of a kind of yacht design to it, and you had that central cockpit, and we moved to this much more traditional looking deck space, I was quite worried that we'd lose that sense of community and with the young people. But actually it's improved it, because what you've got is you can draw people together around the helm or the big saloon, but actually people can have breakout space and one-to-ones. You can have a quality interaction with the young people that we work with and learn much more about their lives, but you can bring everyone together as a team. When we were looking for boats, one of the peculiar things we were looking at was what became really important to us was the importance of having a dining table that you could get everyone around.
Yeah, so that socialising together as well as working together, isn't it?
Yeah, that's bringing it together at the end of the day. What I love about what we do is it's teaching that socialisation. I remember one story I worked with, I think it was a Somalian refugee, and he'd been in the UK for 2 years. And at the end of the voyage, one of his favourite bits to us was that he enjoyed sitting at the dining table. And for him, it's like being in a family. This is the first time I've felt like being in a family.
What about the actual Ocean Globe Race itself then? What's the charities you on? Something as almost madcap as that.
I think it's great. I think for me there's a number of reasons why this is fantastic. One is just, for me, it's a bit of a sense of history. I first got involved driving Lang at Ocean Village in the early 2000s, but there was that memory for me of that. I think Chade ran his boats out of there for a bit. I remember that the Whitbread had left from there. You knew this had happened there, that it was an event place. Of course, the Marine now has been transformed. And that feeling, I think, for us when young people go there, that inspiration that something is going to happen. This is what the race is about, isn't it? Don is very keen on inspiring people to adventure and teaching people risk assessment, communication. And of course, that's what we do as a charity, taking young people out the comfort zone, steering a big boat, being out of the sight of land, or learning that if you want to make a cup of tea, that it's easy to boil the kettle first, and if you want to make boiled potatoes, it's easy to mashed potatoes, it's easy to boil the potatoes first. But challenging each youngster to come to the boat and have them leave with a feeling of success and achievement. And I think that's very much about what the race is about. And you blend that with Tracy Edwards' story, overcoming opposition. 50% probably the young people we take to sea are women. We've got a good track record of women skippering our boat. My current first mate is age 23 and she's absolutely outstanding. A future star in sail training. I've got a young second mate coming through called Sarah, who I just did a voyage recently where our first mate had to drop out and it looked like I was probably going to have to first mate, which I haven't done that for over 20 years and been useless. And Sarah's just got a day skipper, and I was kind of going to, would you first mate this for us? Just have a play, and don't worry, it'll probably go a bit wrong. And she was outstanding.
You sometimes got to give people a chance, haven't you?
She is just a future star in our industry. And of course, just to be involved, the MDL, their support for our charity has been phenomenal over the past 30 years, and we really wouldn't be able to do the work we do without their support. And they themselves have put on over 100 deserving young people on our boat, sponsored these youngsters that have come from all kind of backgrounds. I remember the sponsored a young lad who, he's 13, and I think our brief about him was he only had one arm, and he kind of, how do you lose one arm? And he'd lost it in an industrial washing machine. And he goes, how do you do that? And this lad came on board, and you could kind of understand how he had, because he was just in everything. But he was just inspiring. He wouldn't back down for anything. There was nothing on the boat he wouldn't do. And I remember another lad that did it, again, a lad with one leg, and we wondered about his mobility on the boat, and he's the most stable person I've ever seen on a boat. And we were, one of these days, you're having a kicking at sea, and you needed a bunch of youngsters to get the headsail down onto the foredeck, and they were all giving up. And he just whipped them up and got this huge sail down with a bunch of youngsters whilst there's waves breaking over their head.
Fantastic. And the other way I think of looking at it is, what can young people deliver back?
Yeah, we work with a charity called Max, which is for youngsters that are visually impaired, that have sight in one eye or no eyes. And some of their young people are now watch leaders with us, and they are phenomenal. And, and the depth and value they bring to the boat.
I was looking on the crew list, Mark, and I couldn't see your name anywhere.
Sadly, I'll probably have to do my charitable work during that. But I'll be down cheering everyone on, definitely. And I wish everyone the very best. It should be a fantastic event. And we'll definitely be there to see everyone go and welcome them back. And we'll follow the event and tell the tales to the young people that sail with us, because you never know, they might be the next people doing the race again.
My penultimate guest is the Restoration Science Officer from Blue Marine Foundation, Dr. Luke Helmer, who gave me a little bit of background as to how the foundation ended up being one of the 3 chosen support groups for the OGR.
We are a marine conservation charity, and our overall mission is to see at least 30% of the world's oceans under effective protection. So actually working by 2030, and then the other 70% managed in a responsible way. And we have a whole range of ways that we're looking at doing that, including securing marine protected areas and actually ensuring that they are enforced properly and not just paper parks. We develop models of sustainable fishing and at the same time tackle unsustainable methods of fishing. We connect people with the sea, and the area that I work most closely in is our restoration of marine habitats, and that is how we got involved with MDL. So our Solent Oyster Restoration Project started in 2014, 2015, where we were looking at ways of basically counteracting the decline that had been seen by the Fishery Authority. So once one of Europe's largest fisheries, the Solent, has basically declined from around 200 tonnes to 20 tonnes over a very short period, which is why we were asked to get involved. At the peak, we were taking out about 800 to 900 tonnes at the end of the 70s and beginning of the 80s. And yeah, phenomenal numbers, kind of 15 million oysters annually. So something needed to happen.
The words unsustainable spring most readily to mind there.
Yeah, absolutely. And just the biology of the native oyster just couldn't keep up with that level of extraction. On top of that, we have huge impacts from disease. And again, because the Solent is so busy, water quality, we have huge amounts of nutrients going in from various sources. We have predation and all sorts of other impacts that have negatively affected the native oyster. And as you may well know, and anyone that will be joining the race will know, the Solent is a very busy place. So kind of the marine spatial planning element of it was actually really complicated, and looking to where we could work with restoration led us to marinas and pontoons. Essentially, the native oyster has quite a complicated reproductive cycle. It's probably the most complicated Tinder dating scenario in the marine environment, if you like.
Right. But very, very briefly, just give us a 30-second synopsis of what you mean by that.
So they are patandrous hermaphrodites. They're a very 21st century species. They're gender fluid, so they all start off as male. We think they all start off as male to about 1-2 years old, and then they start developing and becoming mature, and then they can change between male and female states. And then they actually need to be in really close proximity to one another, because those that are functioning as males will release sperm into the water column. Females will then take it in, and unlike other species of oysters that are very successful in other areas of the world, they actually brood their larvae, so the larvae stay within the female oyster for a couple of weeks, and then they're spat out into the environment. And so that's what we wanted to look at, is ways that we could take the remaining populations in the Solent, bring them back together, and increase the larval output, if you like, their larval pumps back out into the Solent.
And that leads us in nicely then to the discussion about the whole thing around the Ocean Globe races. How important is it to an organisation like yours to be part of something on such a huge global scale as this race?
It fits in nicely, like letting people know about the marine environment that they live and work and play in, but also giving them the power to make a difference. And for us as a charity, we're not a membership organisation, so we do rely heavily on donations and kind of funding opportunities like this. So it's absolutely crucial for us to have partnerships, and we really do appreciate it.
And what do you hope to achieve through this race?
A lot of the people involved in the race on the land and actually physically on the water will be people that enjoy the Solent and other areas around the UK, Europe and globally. And the main thing for us is making people aware of how the state of things are, but also how we can fix them. There's no point dwelling on the doom and gloom, and unfortunately that's what most kind of news is at the minute, but we want to provide that positive story of this is fixable. We can, if we put enough money, time and effort into it, really make a difference.
You've got some amazing video on your website. I love one of the comments about bringing people together to bring nature together, and I think that's almost like a really powerful strapline across all the work that you do, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we can't do this unless everyone buys into it. And again, as part of that seascape project, we are putting together a recovery plan that will be developed by the users of the Solent. We don't want to just come in and tell people what they should be doing, because we probably don't know all the answers, but actually getting that local knowledge, the local input, is going to be really crucial.
My final guest is none other than Tracy Edwards MBE. the owner of the much-loved Maiden, who of course skippered the first all-female crew in the 1989 Whitbread. I began our fascinating chat by asking her how she actually ended up being reacquainted with Maiden and what the Maiden Factor Foundation seeks to achieve.
I sold Maiden at the end of the 1989-90 Whitbread, and then I found her again in 2014 and rescued her for the second time and brought her back to the UK and restored her. And we really didn't know what we were going to do with her, and we thought, well, we could do a sort of like a lap of honour around the world and inspire young women to go sailing. King Hussein's motto always was, anything is possible. And then Princess Haya, who actually helped us rescue Maiden the second time in honour of her father, she said, well, I'm passionate about girls' education. And once she told me, the statistics involved in the number of girls who don't have an education and what we can achieve if every girl has 12 years of quality education, I just thought, well, this is an absolute no-brainer. We can do what we're doing with Maiden and spread the word and raise funds for girls' education, and that's what we've been doing for the past 5 years. We've done nearly 3 more laps of the planet, another just over 60,000 miles. We've visited 5 continents. I think we've visited nearly 30 destinations in 20 countries. And it's been absolutely fantastic. We've got another new, very young, all-female crew. They're absolutely amazing, much better than we were at their age.
They said the same thing.
Yeah. And we've absolutely loved what we're doing. But really, for us, the OGR, well, it will be Maiden's final race around the world.
Ah.
And we're going to use it to do some more fundraising for girls' education. And obviously the crew want to win.
Of course.
And be the first all-female crew to win an around-the-world race.
Dare I ask, how's the old girl holding up?
She's holding up better than me. Mind you, if I'd had a £1 million refit, I think I'd be looking pretty good as well, if I'm honest.
You and me both.
No, she's good, but she's reaching the point, as any aluminium yacht will reach in their life, when the cost ratio of doing any more work on her just doesn't really make any more sense. So she'll do this final race around the world and then she will retire. The charity will carry on, but without her.
Goodness me. She's going to be on a plinth somewhere for us to go and visit.
Well, we do have a sneaking suspicion where she might be retiring to, but I can't tell you at the moment.
How excited are you about getting back on board Maiden for the OGR?
Well, they won't actually let me on board Maiden for the OGR, if I'm honest. Apparently I'm too old.
I can't believe that.
I know. Actually, because I have no sailing qualifications to my name, there is no insurance company that would insure me to be the skipper of a Maiden, which I find absolutely hysterically funny.
Goodness me.
I know. I was in the days before Yachtmasters and everything else. But I'm so happy to leave it to this incredible crew that we've got now. And, I would never want to recreate what I had with Maiden. I think it's a mistake to try and go backwards. So I love my role now, which is raising the money, facilitating the logistics that we need to make these things happen. And they allow me every so often to fly to a stopover and, bother them. I live vicariously through my crew, if I'm honest.
You're going to be buying a round of drinks, I can see that now.
Absolutely. I think that's why I'm allowed to go.
As you say, the crew are going to seriously benefit from this huge experience as you and your crew did all those years ago. What sort of lessons do you think they're going to get from taking part in an event such as this, Tracy?
It's the ultimate way to find out what you are capable of. And, of course, human beings, we are so bad at reaching full capacity. I don't think most of us ever really understand what we're capable of unless we're put up backs against the wall and out there survival and everything else. So it is that learning experience of just what it is possible to put your mind and your body through before you can't take any more. And as I say, we're all capable of so much more than we think we are. I think they will discover that. And also what we have with this OGR is this back to basics. So all of them are learning celestial navigation. It's not just the navigator who will know how to navigate. And it's that sense of you are reliant on the boat that you have made sure it's seaworthy, and you are reliant on the team around you, those people that you've trained with, that that you trust with your life. That's an extraordinary experience to go through. Anyone who's ever done the Whitbread has come out of it saying that it was the best experience of our lives, and I absolutely stand by that.
You really get navigation the old-fashioned way. It's really quite close to your soul, isn't it?
It is, because for the first time in my life, I had power. So I learned to navigate when I was 19 years old on my second transatlantic. And for the whole, really, of my teenage years, I felt very disempowered and very useless and not worth anything. And it really was sailing initially that taught me that I'd found my tribe, my people. I've been looking for them for 17 years. And then when I was 17, I found them. And I finally fitted in somewhere, which I never had done before. And for me, navigation was the final piece of the jigsaw puzzle, because for me it was understanding that I had the power to be in control of something, a part of my life, a knowledge that I'd never had before. And that was just an overwhelming sensation. It was slightly worrying that 2 days after I'd learned to navigate, sort of 5 days into the transatlantic, the skipper said, "Right, take us to Portugal." And I said, "Well, yeah, but you'll be checking, right?" And he went, no, wherever you take us, that's where we're going. Oh my goodness, really?
With power comes responsibility.
Absolutely. But I've never, ever got over that sense of wonder and magic when I navigate a boat into a port. It's a very special feeling, and I know that our skipper navigator at the moment has that same passion, and I think the girls are definitely getting to grips with it as well.
For some of our listeners, they're perhaps not over familiar with Whitbread boats and boats like Maiden. So let's have some key facts from you, if you may, please, Tracy, about the boat itself. How fast does it go, and how do you cook on board, and what sort of meals you might have on board?
Okay, so she's 58 foot long, she's 16 feet wide, and her draft, which means the depth of her keel in the water, is 10.5 feet. She's very basic. Down below is what you would call open plan, I guess. So it really is just what you need. There is somewhere to cook, there is somewhere to go to the loo, there is somewhere to navigate, and there are bunks, and that's it. The only other place of any importance is where you keep the sails. And the sails are often looked after better than the crew, because we don't mind getting the crew wet, but we don't like to put the sails down below wet, so we need to make sure that they're dry. It's a sparse existence, but that really, I think that's such a huge part of what makes it the experience that it is. There's no frills, there's no trimming, there's no extra stuff to think about. You get up, you get kitted out, you get on deck. If you have to eat, and eating really, because it's just freeze dried, becomes a function. It's not let's eat. It's like, I need to eat. It's fuel. In the Southern Ocean, you're trying to eat 5,000 calories a day, which at 5'2" is a lot. Freeze-dried food is much better now than it used to be.
I was going to say, it's come a long way, hasn't it?
It has come a very long way, thank goodness, because it used to be, so disgusting, I can't tell you. So you are really back to basics, but that's the fun, that's the pleasure, that's the enjoyment of it, that everything you're doing, every single thing that you're doing, your surroundings, every process, every action, every movement is to make the boat go fast, to win the race. That's it. That is your focus. And as I say, everything around you is dedicated to make that happen.
You talked there about keeping weight to an absolute minimum. So we're not talking here about fluffy towels, are we, and soap?
Yeah, the head is basic, I would say. It's a head, and there's a sink, and there's a pull-out shower, but everyone's banned from using the pull-out shower because you never want to use fresh water to wash yourself, because fresh water is for drinking and eating and reconstituting the freeze-dried. That's it. That's what your water maker makes the water for. No one would dream of using fresh water for washing or doing anything as frivolous as that.
A wet wipe will do.
A wet wipe. There are lots of wet wipes, and Johnson's baby powder liberally spread around the body, especially in the Southern Ocean where you haven't washed for about 4 or 5 weeks at a time.
Well, there we are. There's a good sponsor link there, Tracy.
Yeah, Johnson's baby powder.
So you're going to be dipping in and out of this race as it circumnavigates the globe. Have you got an itinerary as yet?
So, yeah, we've got some ETAs for when we think Maiden will be getting into each stopover. We have a shore team that does a sort of a tag relay. So some of us will be going to different stopovers, covering different things that need to be done. And for us, really, this does look like a typical Whitbread, where you have your crew, you've got your shore team, and every single person on the crew and the team is as important as everyone else.
And the final one, MDL and Ocean Globe Race coming together, a perfect partnership, would you agree?
It is an absolutely perfect partnership. I mean, you couldn't write it that MDL have their 50th anniversary the same year that Whitbread. How did I not know that? I mean, for me, MDL has been part of every ocean race that I've done, and I couldn't have imagined us not being at MDL Ocean Village for the start of this race. That would have been quite discombobulating, I think, for all of us. Southampton is the home of ocean racing, and that used to be its banner, if you like. And so we are just so happy to be back there and to work with the people at MDL who totally get what we need when we need it, and that are really part of that celebration of the Whitbread. I think that's been a hugely powerful part of this race.
Thanks to all my wonderful guests for this edition of This Marina Life with MDL Marinas. The date for your diary for the race start is 1 p.m. on Sunday, September the 10th. Full details are now on the MDL OGR website, where you can also get some free tickets to visit the race village. I hope to see you there.